We begin the movie with a horseback chase, where a man tries to save a child. As the pursuers attack them with their bows, the man decides to throw the boy around one of the bends. A few meters ahead, he is stopped by several men who are already waiting for him, leaving him badly wounded by the multiple arrows that pierce his body. The leader of the group orders his team to keep searching for the target. Some time later, we see the boy unconscious, sheltered among a few logs, when suddenly a slave trader crosses paths with him. Taking advantage of the situation, the man decides to take him along with the other slaves. Upon arriving at the village, our protagonist witnesses how they treat those they consider inferior. Because he takes 5 seconds to get off the cart, the men grab him violently. Ting tries to defend himself, which enrages the group's leader, who approaches to beat him. But the boy bites his arm, leaving him wounded. Furious over what happened, the brute orders his men to bathe him in blood. Once the ritual begins, the chief tells him he will be given a second chance. If he manages to survive what they have prepared, it seems he will be allowed to stay with them. Using the stone he grabbed when they threw him to the ground, Ting strikes a lethal blow to the man's eye. The thug throws him into a kind of pit, where they release a crocodile. While the young boy fights the wild animal, we see 2 men exchanging looks before they begin to neutralize the slavers, using explosive devices to gain the upper hand. The infiltrators take down most of the men. Forced to flee for their lives, the slavers end up escaping. Recognizing his abilities, the leader of the group throws him a dagger, so he can defend himself. After an intense battle, our protagonist emerges victorious. The next morning, Ting rests in the infiltrators' village. He has a nightmare where he remembers his family being murdered by men with covered faces. Ting wakes up not knowing where he is. When he sees the village shaman, the boy becomes frightened, but the man who threw him the dagger appears. When he saw him fighting the slavers, he realized there was something special inside him, something that reminded him of someone he once knew. Churning asks him to come closer, and the shaman places his hand on Ting's head, saying that not even the spirits have dared to challenge him, that Ting has a powerful destiny, and that when he holds a weapon in his hands, he will be able to conquer the entire world. Churning introduces himself, saying he is the king of the bandits at the Garuda wing cliff. He was impressed when he saw him fighting the crocodile. If Ting wants to learn how to use weapons and martial arts, he can stay to train with them. If he decides to leave, they will not stand in his way. As he walks through the village, realizing that everyone lives freely while practicing different martial arts, Ting decides to stay, starting his training even with his body still injured. Churning tells him that he must connect his mind with his body, fusing with his weapon as if they were one. Every weapon, regardless of its form, has its own properties, strengths, and weaknesses. Weapons are the tangible shape of power. Anyone who can fuse his body and soul with them will possess the greatest power in the land, and therefore, the world will bow before his strength. Several years later, we see our protagonist transformed into a warrior, testing his abilities. Ting walks through a herd of elephants until he tames the alpha elephant with a pat on the head. Having passed the test of skill and agility, the warrior is now tested in martial arts, easily defeating his first opponent. Ting then faces a kung fu practitioner. After using their limbs separately, they both employ multiple animal styles in battle, and in the end, the warrior defeats him using the mantis style. In the final fight, our protagonist faces a warrior of the 8 limbs art, making the fight more difficult due to his rival's size and power. Ting is knocked to the ground, but he manages to free himself and applies a submission technique to secure victory. In the next part, they test the power of his mind, where he faces a wild woman who acts like an animal. At first, she pretends to be defenseless, asking for help so that when her victim gets close, she can attack by surprise and kill. Thanks to his skills, Ting dodges her attacks. Churning throws a dagger to the woman, who immediately attacks to kill. The warrior dodges again and finishes her off using the dagger. Having passed all the tests, Churning grants him leadership of the bandits. Now he can command their raids. Later, we see the community ambushing another group to steal goods, defeating them with total superiority. Our protagonist begins to remember his past. It turns out he is the son of a military commander who was once a great warrior. Due to constant clashes between villages for control of territory, his parents decided to leave him in a dance academy far from the war zones. Over time, the young boy meets an orphan girl named Pim. Still not understanding why his parents left him at the academy, Ting tells her that his father is one of the 4 commanders of the East. He wanted to learn martial arts and study weapons to become a great warrior. What he wanted most was to fight alongside his father, to help honest people, and to stand against those who cause harm. Back in the present, we see the leader of the slavers smiling over the jewels they have stolen, trading slaves. One of the mothers clings to her son, begging to stay with him. Completely dehumanized, the slavers forcefully separate them. In a desperate attempt to break free, the woman scratches the leader's face while her child screams, begging her to stop. The brute begins to beat the mother. Unexpectedly, one of his men throws a jar at his head. Enraged, the brute begins to beat his own men. He grabs a drunk man and, after a few blows, tries to drown him with alcohol. Breaking the jar, the drunk attacks his throat, revealing himself to be the boy who was once thrown into the crocodile pit. Despite his condition, the warrior defends himself using martial arts. On the ground, Ting neutralizes the slavers with no complications. At that moment, the leader gets up and tries to attack him, but the warrior stops him with a single blow. Taking the fight seriously, Ting finishes off the men using all his limbs, leaving only the leader's right hand intact. Ting humiliates him and throws him against a boiling pan. Looking around, the slaver realizes that his entire group has been subdued by Ting's team. Unable to do anything, the brute begs him to let him live, promising to serve as a slave if it means staying alive, offering all his money and land. Ting tells him he'll give him a chance, the same chance he gave him when he was a child. After freeing all the slaves, the families thank him for saving their lives. Returning to his past, our protagonist says goodbye to his friend, who begs him not to go, but Ting tells her he has no choice. He promises to return and leaves with the man who supposedly will take him to his father, not before giving her his favorite bracelet as a keepsake. As they move along the road, Ting begins questioning him about his family, but the man doesn't answer. That's when his father's most loyal soldier appears. It turns out Wang betrayed the commander for unknown reasons. Hitting the man with his head, the loyal soldier manages to take him down and kill him. Fleeing toward his family's village, Ting is shocked to find it in flames. Hidden in the tall grass, he watches as his mother is killed by an arrow. Just as he is about to scream, the loyal soldier appears to stop him and keep him from being seen. Then his father dies under the sword of a warrior with an Arab appearance. At that moment, the boy screams for his family, prompting the rival commander to order his men to capture him. After repeating the scenes from the beginning of the story, we see our protagonist cutting his own hand as a promise of vengeance. Leaving the cave, Chernang tells him that the day he met him in the crocodile pit, he reminded him of someone who is just like him. That day, his eyes burned with fire, shining with rage, and to this day, those flames still burn in his eyes. Before continuing his command, he must extinguish those flames no matter what it takes. Everyone in the cliff of the Garuda wing knows he is well trained. He must trust his abilities. They will be waiting for his return. After riding all day, we see that Rayasena has become the first monarch of the Garuda Deva dynasty. To honor the gods, they will perform a sacred ritual dedicated to the divine monument, so that the great Garuda dynasty will remain for eternity as a symbol of power in the land. When his speech ends, the dancers begin their performance, forced by Rayasena. They are the women taken from the academy. The main dancer is the girl our protagonist met as a child. Rayasena directs all his attention toward her, and she, under threat, must obey all the monarch's orders or face death. In the next performance, the warrior appears disguised as one of the ceremony's members. Taking advantage of his target's distraction with Pim, our protagonist attacks the surrounding guards, stabs Rayasena, and removes his mask to speak of his parents. He begins torturing him, but more guards appear only to be taken down. The monarch tries to escape without success, and the warrior uses explosives to create chaos. After slashing him with a sword, our protagonist locks eyes with his childhood friend. Without exchanging a word, the warrior leaves to return to the village, only to find a man dressed like the one who killed his father. Proving his superiority with swords, our protagonist defeats his rival in seconds. Realizing he's being watched, more assassins appear to kill him. Despite being outnumbered and outarmed, the warrior overcomes them using multiple fighting disciplines against each of his enemies. As he advances, he encounters more attackers and subdues them, excelling in every combat style, until he faces a man with a katana who manages to wound him in the abdomen. To stop the bleeding, Ting stuffs sand into the wound and ties it with his shirt, proving he's a complete warrior. Ting grabs one of the soldiers' weapons to keep fighting. Remembering the advice of the man who once saved his life, our protagonist uses every weapon as an extension of his own body. Despite killing multiple enemies, more keep appearing from all sides. In a sudden turn, the alpha elephant appears to defend him, using its strength and tusks to strike down soldiers as Ting fights alongside it. Mounting the elephant, a kind of sorcerer enters the scene to fight the warrior. This man possesses superior abilities, and along with Ting's exhaustion from earlier battles, he manages to land several blows. Even so, Ting keeps fighting, driven by his thirst for revenge, though he is knocked down again by the soldiers as others surround him with shields. Realizing the monarch is still alive, the warrior begins to cry. Rayasena orders his men not to kill him, saying he is someone special who has been waiting to do it with his own hands. That person turns out to be Chernang, the man who once saved him from the slavers. It is revealed that Chernang was the one who killed his father that night. Now, they must fight to the death in a battle orchestrated by the monarch. In the middle of the fight, his adoptive father yells that he's a traitor and doesn't deserve to be part of his family. If he had known he was the commander's son, he would have killed him long ago. With tears in his eyes, Chernang tells him he will give his life in exchange for his father's. Knowing the sword is about to strike, Chernang pushes it forward, dying with a smile on his face. The monarch orders his men to kill the warrior, but his death must be slow and painful. They must make sure he suffers until his last drop of blood is spilled. With our protagonist crying over the death of his adoptive father, the movie comes to an end.